Hi, fifth graders. So today we're going to take care of notes. We need our notebook, this paper if you can print it, scissors, glue, pencil. So let's first take care of our table of contents. And I'm sorry if you hear screaming in the background. I'm at home and my kids are playing games, and that involves screaming apparently. So sorry if you hear them. All right, so we're going to be filling in page 39 in our table of contents. Today we are going to do it says data on a coordinate plane in my notes, but this is really patterns on a graph. So we'll just put that in there. I'll have to go fix those notes. So we're doing patterns on a graph today. So we're going to take our knowledge and let's look at page 37 first so we can remember. We're going to take what we did for the input-output table, this knowledge of finding the relationship, what happens to X and what the result is with Y, and we're going to put that knowledge to use. Okay, so if you do not have the ability to print this paper, you're pretty much going to need to split your paper in half and have an input-output table over here that has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces on the input-output table. So I would just start there. If you can print it, you're going to go ahead and get it cut out and glued in your book. Don't just make sure we don't cut anything important off. And we're going to get that glued into our notebooks. Hopefully. That's going to be a little wide. Let me see if I can get that a little closer. Alright. Do glue around outside and glue through the middle. Okay, so this is going to be page 39. Page 39. Okay, so let's take a look at these notes and what we're going to be practicing today and tomorrow. So we're going to go back and review that skill of finding the relationship or a pattern between X and Y. So remember that we're thinking of this as a input and output table. And so what we're going to work on first is we're going to take a table and we're going to graph those plots on the graph. So the relationship is between X to Y. So the first thing that we need to do is first figure out what this pattern is so we can identify the pattern and name the rule. So we go from 0 to 0. So this is either going to be plus 0 because 0 plus 0 is 0, or it's going to be times a number because anything times a number is 0. And you can tell with this next one that comes here that this has to be a multiplicative pattern just based on that first number, okay? Now I have to see how can we get from a half to 2.5, and that confuses me. I'm like, how? I don't see a pattern of what's being done to X to give me this Y. So when this happens to me and I'm trying to find a pattern in a table and there's decimals, I look to see if I can see any whole numbers. We already know that this has to be a multiplicative pattern, so I'm going to write that out. This has to be multiplicative because anything times 0 is 0. And if you add 0 to any number, you're not going to get a result. So we know this has to be multiplicative. The question is multiplying times what? So I'm going to look at my whole numbers and ask myself, what do I have to do multiply the number 1 by to get 5? Oh, times 5, right? And will that work here? 2 times 5, will that give me 10? And so I think we really have found the pattern of multiplying times 5. 2 times 5 is 10, 1 times 5 is 5, 0 times 5 is 0. Let's see if this is right. This is times 5. We can multiply a decimal times a whole number. We know how. And let's just do that right there. 0.5 times 5. 5 times 5 will give us 25. Regroup the 2. 5 times 0 is 0 plus 2 more. And then we just have to put that decimal back in that one place. And so we get 2 and 5/10. So you can see this is the pattern. This is multiplying times 5 because 0 and 5/10 does give us 2 and 5/10, 2.5. So that works. So let's identify the rule then. Remember how to write a rule? Let's review how. Okay. So y is our result, and it's equal to, and this is multiplying, so since x is our variable, we don't want to say 5 times x, because that'd be confusing. So we're going to say 5x. And then other ways that we can show multiplication, we can do 5 equals 5 dot x. So I remember all this. And we can also do y equals 5 in parentheses x. And of course, we can reverse everything the other direction. Okay. So how do we plot this pattern right here? Well, your ordered pairs are right here on this graph. So if we want to graph this pattern of multiplying times 5, that means that we can write our ordered pairs right here. So I'm just going to add parentheses to these. That way I know that these are going to be my ordered pairs that I'm going to plot on my coordinate grid. And that's how you take a pattern and you plot it on a grid. So my first ordered pair is going to be 0, 0. I'm going to stay at the origin. 0, 0 is exactly where that origin is located. I'm going to put a dot right there. My next one says go halfway on the x-axis. This is my x-axis. I'm always going to go to the right first, horizontally. And I'm going to go halfway because 5/10 is the same thing as a half. So 0 to 1 halfway is going to be about right here. And then my next number is 2.5 or 2 and 5/10. So I'm going to move up 1 whole spot. I'm going to move up 2 whole spots. And this little dot is actually going to float in the middle there. It looks different than the dots we've put on before, haven't we? I'm going to check these off as we go. So my next ordered pair is going to be 1, 5. So I'm going to move to the right 1, and I'm going to go up 5. And then my next ordered pair, so I can plot this pattern, this rule on my graph, is going to be 1 and 5/10. So I'm going to start at 0, and I'm going to go to the 1, and then I'm going to think 5/10 is equal to a half, so I'm going to go about halfway. And then I'm going to go up 7, and then I'm going to go up halfway. My dot's going to go right there. Then my last ordered pair is going to be 2, 10. 2 will be my x, and y, 10 will be my y. And so I'm going to go, start at my origin, I'm going to go to the right 2, and I'm going to go up 10 and put a point. I like to connect my dots on my graphs. I don't know why, because it looks cool. So it makes almost a perfect little line, diagonal line. Okay. All right, so this rule was y equals 5 times x. That means that x, each x value here was being multiplied times 5 to get the corresponding y value. Okay, relationship between x to y. All right, so for this one, it's flipping it. It gives us a pattern here that's on the graph. It gives us points on a graph. So what we need to do first is to name the ordered pairs that it gives us, and then we can put it on the input and output table. So let's find the first point. Let's write the ordered pair for this point right here. And you can see that it doesn't make any movement on the x-axis, and it just goes up to y. So that first ordered pair is going to be 0, 5. Okay. now I'm going to plot my point for my next dot. This dot right here, it goes to the right 1 on the x, so that means my x is 1, and then my y is 6. And I got to keep going. I got to write all my ordered pairs before I even think about finding the rule or find the pattern. So I'm going to go to the right 2, and then I'm going to go up 7, so my next ordered pair is 2, 7. Okay, so look at this last dot. What do you think that ordered pair is going to be? It's going to be 3, 8. Okay, so we have the ordered pairs from our graph here, and now we're going to find the rule and the pattern. So let's go ahead and put, remember the x coordinate is going to be represent the x input value, and the y coordinate is going to represent the y output. And then we have 1, 6, and then we have 2, 7. 2 is the x, 7 is the y, 3, 8. 3 is the x, 8 is the y, and it looks like we have extra space here. Okay. All right, so let's find the pattern. Remember, the relationship is what is happening between x to y. What is happening there between x and y? So we have to look. Our first number here is 0, and then we do have a number over here. So is that going to be additive or a multiplicative pattern? Ah, very good. This has to be an additive pattern because we know that if we multiply any number times 0, our answer will be 0. So this is an additive pattern. So we already know from the first one. So now we need to figure out by how much. So we have to ask ourselves, what do we need to add to 0 to get y? And the answer is, this is plus 5. So plus 5, 0 plus 5 will give us 5. 1 plus 5, does that give us 6? Yep. 2 plus 5, does that give us 7? And 3 plus 5, does that give us 8? It sure does. So this pattern that is plotted on this coordinate grid is an additive pattern, and that x value is increasing by 5 to get the coordinating y value. Okay, so let's write the rule. What is happening to x to give us this y in these ordered pairs? So y equals 5 plus x. Or we can say y equals x plus 5, or x plus 5 equals y. We can write them all those ways. Just play with those numbers. Okay, so before we go today and you move on to your practice, I want you to think about what do you notice here with this first value being 0 and this first value 0? How is it so easy for me to automatically go just by looking at the 0 and seeing what the corresponding y was? How did I know immediately if it was additive or multiplicative? What do you think? Well, tell me. Answer the question that follows. That's the big question of the day. How can you know if you have a x value and the coordinating y? How can that help you determine if the pattern is multiplicative or additive? Okay. All right. When you do your practice today, it's a Google Doc. What I want you to know is that I couldn't figure out how to allow you to be able to plot those dots on there, so you don't have to do that. If you happen to know how you could plot your dots by using like a shape and getting those dots on your grids, go for it. If you can't figure it out, don't worry about it. I understand technology is kind of limiting us today on the practice, so you're really just going to have to focus on your input, output, making sure that you have your ordered pairs and that you write the rule. The rule has to be written as an equation. So when you write your rule today, you can't just say 5 times x. Okay, you just can't say plus 5. You have to use an equation for your rule for today's practice. So that's one piece that you need to know. All right, y'all have a great day.